Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television.
I like football!
Now, the 2017 Radio Sports Broadcaster of the Year on the show with back-to-back Montana Broadcaster Association awards for sports coverage and award-winning sports journalism. Here is Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez.
Hello, Montana. Gary Woodland wins the U.S. Open. The Badlands Bowl goes to Montana yet again. And I guess there was some trade in the NBA. It is Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio and across the state on SWX Montana Television. Hi, how are you? Great to be with you. Thanks for spending some time with us on your radios, on your televisions, or on your internets, as the case may be. The Tootell Nuanez YouTube channel up and running. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. You can find us on the World Wide Web, 1029ESPN.com. There you can listen to the stream. You can listen live no matter where you are. Maybe it's easier, more convenient. Maybe you're out of market, wherever you might be, 1029ESPN.com. There, the stream available thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you'd like to call us, we welcome that as well. 329-1899, area code 406-329-1899. All guests join us via the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. In the show today, we're going to start with Anthony Davis heading to Los Angeles. I know this broke, was it Saturday or even Friday night? That
it was like news dump-ish, yes. I mean, I know they weren't intentionally news dumping. It was just the timing of it.
The way it worked.
It was definitely it hit at a time, like probably the slowest time it could have hit in terms of the hype that it could have.
Going into the weekend,
right.
And then you got the U.S. Open. And
U.S. Open,
else.
Father's Day, summer starting, everything.
So this is obviously something that we've kind of known about now for a couple of days, and I know that a lot has been said on it, but I think in what I've listened to, it has been a very Los Angeles-centric conversation, which makes sense because you have, one All-Pro going to the one of the all-time great players now paired together in Los Angeles. So it's got all the star power, it's got all the talent, it's got the city, the team, and all that. But and we will talk about this from Los Angeles point of view. But I think that this is, in terms of just the basketball side of this is so much more intriguing for New Orleans. What they're getting, and given the fact that they got the draft coming up on Thursday and have the two of the first four picks going to the New Orleans Pelicans. So I want to get into that. We will talk about the U.S. Open. I realize that golf is, everybody talks about the majors a little bit, but there's a few things yesterday and from this tournament that I took away that I think that are worth talking about. And I know I'd like to hear Colter's thoughts on this. Is Gary Woodland winning his first ever major, 13 under par, set the new record in terms of strokes in relation to par at a Pebble Beach U.S. Open. There's been 6 of them, and he sets the all-time record with 13 under. And we will also get into the Badlands Bowl, and not so much the game. Again, the Badlands Bowl, an all-star football game played between the best or some of the best of the state of Montana versus the best or some of the best from North Dakota. The state of Montana All-Stars won this game 41-14 over North Dakota. North Dakota was up 14-0 at halftime, and then Montana reeled off 41 straight in the form of 6 touchdowns. Hello, count them up in that second half. So we'll touch on that, and also more specifically the kids that are in this that are going to be playing at Montana and Montana State next year, and some of the talent that you saw on the field. Interesting, Jesse Owens, who's coming to the University of Montana to play football, caught touchdowns from 2 different quarterbacks who are respectively going to Montana and Montana State to play football. So catching balls from all the kids while you're still in high school and have a chance to do it before you're playing against each other at the next level. So we'll get into some of that stuff. And also we may touch on the fact that was it Thursday of last week was the 25th anniversary of, or I don't know if you don't want to say anniversary like you're commemorating it. 25 years ago, though, the O.J. Simpson slow speed chase in the Bronco and all the things that came out of that. Pretty interesting, both in sports and in culture. that was a quarter century ago that took place. Pretty remarkable. And also, Missoula Osprey took 2 of 3 from the Great Falls Voyagers over the weekend. They won 9-0 last night. They head down to Idaho Falls to take on the Chuckers. Again, Idaho Falls, the new North Division team in the Pioneer League after Helena moved to Colorado Springs between last year and this year to have their season down there. So there you go. That's what we got going in the show today. Coulter, when I saw this come across, let me ask you this. The management is almost entirely different. The general manager that was in New Orleans is no longer there. Magic is out, steps down as president. This deal looks nearly identical to the one that it seems to me that Magic proposed to New Orleans the first time around, and it couldn't get done for whatever reason. Now all of a sudden, and now part of that is we didn't know at that time that the Los Angeles Lakers were going to have the 4th overall pick. That's impactful.
That's impactful.
But, it's LeVar Ball, Brandon Ingram, 2 number 2 picks, and Josh Hart, who is proving to be an outstanding professional basketball player, young guy out of Villanova, and the number 4 overall pick for Anthony Davis going to the Los Angeles Lakers. When this came across, your thought was what?
Well, my initial thought was that I compulsively analyze.
Live and breathe.
Well, I compulsively analyze the roster construction in the NBA because I do think that, and I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but I do think that there is a misperception that the NBA is an NBA live game. That's an NBA 2K video game. And it's not. It's not about just getting 5 of the most highly rated, quote-unquote, players that you can get. Sometimes you have to have good – it's more about fit. How do you complement each other? Even when Chris Bosh and LeBron James went to Miami to team up with Dwayne Wade, I thought that was a B+ in terms of the way that they fit together, not an A+, even though they are A+ Hall of Fame talents, each individual guy. I do think that the Boston Celtics big 3 with Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce complement each other better than a lot of the other big 3s that we've seen. I think the Golden State Warriors, before Kevin Durant, complemented each other better. And it's not to say that they're not as good with KD. It's just they're not as good.
They're as complimentary.
Guys, complimentary. LeBron James has played with some great players. I think that Kyrie Irving has I think the role that Kyrie Irving assumed the year that the Cleveland Cavaliers won the championship was a very underrated role because Kyrie Irving is an isolation player that played with the ball not in his hands often, but then still took advantage of isolation opportunities. And when the Cavs were at their best, it was LeBron James running the point forward, engaging in the secondary fast break, and then if it wasn't there, pulling it out and basically defaulting to Kyrie Irving. I think they both deserve more credit than they get for that because Kyrie Irving was a ready, willing, and able second option who was a primary option. He just had to wait for his turn to be the primary option secondarily to LeBron James. But LeBron James also defaulted to him and allowed him to run the half-court stuff with Cleveland. That was when they were at their best. They couldn't harness it for more than a year. But
so they
still brought a championship back to Cleveland. That said, I don't think that LeBron James has played with very many elite guys who also complement him. He has never played with a rim-to-rim guy of any sort. I mean, the centers that he's played with are guys like Zydrunas Ilgauskas and Timothy Mozgov and Drew Gooden and Larry Nance and Tristan Thompson. He's never even had like a DeAndre Jordan and Clint Capella, let alone an Anthony Davis. Also, though, the fact that Anthony Davis is not only a rim runner, rim to rim, he's not only one of the 5 best rebounders in the league, he's not only one of the 3 best rim protectors in the league, but he's also a pick and roll and pick and pop power forward. That is absolutely perfect for LeBron James. Think about how many great shots Kevin Love got when he was playing with LeBron because of his ability to pick and pop. AD can do that at an even more prevalent level. So to answer your question, I think that this is the best superstar fit that LeBron James will ever experience in his career if all things go according to plan. I think the fit is flawless.
Here's where I had no problem with what you said. There are people, pundits out there saying that this makes Los Angeles for sure the team to beat in the West, and some people saying absolutely the front runner to win the championship next year. A team that hasn't been in the playoffs in 6 years. There's no doubt that when you pair these two guys together, It's huge, and you can point to, and they also got to keep Kyle Kuzma and didn't have to send him over. Okay, it's all well and good. When I know 3 guys that are on a basketball team, even when it's these 3 and specifically these 2, I got to see more. I got to know more about what's going to happen, and I don't think that the Lakers are done in free agency yet. And until I am aware of what that starting 5 looks like, and specifically a point guard, although if they want to, if they want LeBron to run the point, he obviously can do that. Then I'm going to withhold judgment in terms of how good this team can be. I'm not going to sit here and anoint this as the de facto, they're the team now to beat. They're not the team to beat yet.
Well, they're not even a team.
They're not. That's it. Exactly.
They have
even a team.
right now under contract. Right now, these are the only 5 players under contract for the Los Angeles Lakers. They got 5 guys on their roster that are actually LA Lakers.
It'll be hard to
LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kyle Kuzma, Moritz Wagner, and Isaac Bonga. That's it. But everybody, there was so much pressure for them to try to do something this year, and then when LeBron got hurt, it derailed the whole thing. And they're obviously a really, really dysfunctional organization. There was obviously a lot of clashing between LeBron James and the young players. It was very clear right off the bat that he did not necessarily like those guys. He wasn't eager to play with a lot of the players on the Lakers, Lonzo Ball included. And I think that, but they also took a lot of heat for signing, Tyson Chandler to the veterans minimum, JaVale McGee to the veterans minimum, Lance Stevenson to the veterans minimum. The Kentavious Caldwell-Pope contract was one of the dumbest contracts in the league. They paid Kentavious Caldwell-Pope $13 million last year. To do what? He did nothing but 1-year deals, all off the books. Yep. So now where are we at? The Lakers have $77 million in cap space.
Yeah, even with signing now 2 obviously max guys, they have room, but they got to fill out a roster too.
For sure.
I mean,
for sure. But here's the other underrated part about LeBron James. One of the most underrated parts about LeBron James. Well, first of all, a lot of people would say this is a flaw of his, but it's worked out for him, and I think that we have seen we've seen this example over and over and over again, and we recently just saw it with the Toronto Raptors. Veterans win in May and June in the NBA. They do. It doesn't matter if they can't play in February. It doesn't matter if they're in and out of the lineup. Veterans are what win when it comes to the playoffs. And what did LeBron James do, both in Miami and in Cleveland? Went in, played with whoever the roster he was that he inherited, and then pick and chose and plucked to fill in with guys that he trusts. By the end of his career, Mike Miller was in no form an NBA player. He was a corpse that stood in the corner. But LeBron James was comfortable to pass him the ball and trust him to make a shot. The 4 times that would happen in a game, maybe, But that's how LeBron rolls, and it's a flaw, but also not, because that's how it works in the NBA. And LeBron has always been way more inclined to have James Jones and Mike Miller and on down the line his dudes, way more than a young project like a Jordan Clarkson or a Rodney Hood. Like LeBron he's not interested in helping anyone develop anything at this point in his career. He just wants to win. And that's what I think is going to be the most intriguing part now is I think that now you have 2 pillars that complement each other so well. And I think that you can really, really accentuate these 2 guys if you add the right pieces to the mix if you're the Lakers. Also, though, I do feel like you could derail a little bit of the chemistry LeBron James and Anthony Davis at least project to have if you were to add the wrong type of ball stopper. There's been a lot of talk about maybe Kyrie Irving coming back. Now, I just said Kyrie Irving and LeBron had a very harmonious deal when they were at their best. I just don't necessarily know if that's a consistent thing that you can hone. I think that adding guys like, J.J. Redick is a free agent. That would be perfect for these guys. Adding a bunch of shooter type guys like the Bucks had this last year, guys like Ersan Ilyasova or Nikolai Mirotic, Chris Middleton. There's a bunch of guys like those type of dudes are the dudes that you want on the Lakers. And I do think you could add a 3rd star, but I think it needs to be the right type of guy, both chemistry wise and basketball logistics wise.
Well, the thing is that you've maxed out on 2 guys, and now you got 5 people on your entire team. You got to get 8 more, and $76 million goes quick in the NBA. And so, finding the right spots of, for guys who are going to be able to fill in the gaps, but also to fill out the roster is going to be, a sort of delicate, interesting dance, especially within the context of a Lakers organization that doesn't seem to have any particular direction or head of it.
I've always go ahead. Just reset us, and then we'll get into it.
It's Tootell and Nuanez.
Here we are, 102.9 ESPN Missoula. I've always thought, too, that sometimes the trying to make the big splash, trying to get that third star of stars, sometimes robs you of being able to get some really good players. Like Al Horford's a free agent, for example. I just looked up the top free agents. Like Al Horford would be a great complimentary player. Like Al Horford wants to win. He's at the point of his career where he would sacrifice anything to go get another championship. He's been an all-star. He's really good defensive, mind, vocal, linchpin type guy that can direct traffic even if he doesn't necessarily
it's good
have.
because LeBron could use somebody to put him in the right place defensively.
You mean just standing up by the three-point line is not how it goes?
LeBron, there's actually nobody there, so you're not actually stopping anyone.
It's actually truly amazing that LeBron straight up had back-to-back the best 2 defensive seasons of his career when he was 33 and 34 years old in Cleveland because he was playing with a bunch of dudes who had no clue what was going on. And then he came to the Lakers and he realized, well, these guys don't have any clue what's going on either. I'm not wasting my energy. I'm going to run three-point line to three-point line. It's amazing how he really got away with that. He did for a full year.
He crossed a threshold at some point, I don't know when, where anybody who would have been killed for lack of effort, and especially a guy like LeBron, lack of leadership, where everybody just went, oh, yeah, I wouldn't run if I was you either. This is a train wreck. You're making the right decision. You're actually being complimented for not doing the thing that you're paid to do.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
If he does it again, though, now he's going to get killed.
Definitely. No, it was a situational deal, and now, I mean, this is all the eggs in the basket for the Los Angeles Lakers, this deal.
Oh, for sure.
Coulter, I said I wanted to talk about this, about the New Orleans Pelicans side of this.
Let's stick on the Lakers just for a second.
Oh, I know how this is going to go.
Now, I just want to ask you, there's a couple guys that I think are intriguing. I want to get your opinion. There's thoughts on Kyrie Irving going to Los Angeles. What do you think of that?
I would hate that.
I
don't know if hate is maybe too strong. First of all, I think it's hugely unlikely. I mean, I think that's a complete pipe dream that would in fact happen, and I don't like that.
Okay. The other guy's name who's popped up prevalently is Kemba Walker. What do you think of that?
I think Kemba Walker would make them the team to beat.
Oh, man. I'm so stuck on it because I do think that Kemba Walker's great. He plays with as much heart as anybody in the league, I think. I also think it would just be great to have Kemba Walker not in Charlotte so we could watch Kemba Walker on television every once in a while.
Wouldn't that be fun?
I mean, instead of just like watching Instagram highlights, it would be nice to watch Kemba Walker on the TV once in a while. But I do think that it would be a really interesting transition for him to go from not being the man, because he's only been the man on bad teams. And that's really hard to get out of.
It is. I mean, what about Jimmy Butler?
See, Jimmy Butler's the most intriguing player to me because I think just straight up player-wise, Jimmy Butler is the second most complimentary player in the NBA to LeBron James, besides Anthony Davis. I think Jimmy Butler's a dog on defense. I think Jimmy Butler can get you buckets when you need it. But I also think Jimmy Butler's a very volatile guy. And I think Jimmy Butler is an all-star talent who 2 straight franchises don't want. So where are you at with that? If LeBron could get to Jimmy Butler, though, and say, hey, here's what we need. I'm going to dime you up. You will get shots. You'll score 18 to 22 points per game. Ride with me, and let's see what we can do. If that could be an understood thing that could last, I think that would make LA the team to beat more than any other combination.
Yeah. You want to know what I think? I think they had a guy that could have made them click beautifully, and that's Josh Hart. I'm so high on Josh Hart.
I agree.
And I think that
that's such a great example, though, right?
Yeah, because he's not – I mean, he's still – what's he, third year, going to be in his third year now in the league.
But
this
that's
season?
what I'm talking about. Is you don't need to go get Kemba Walker if you can get Josh Hart and Patrick Beverly and Avery Bradley and like a bunch of those type of guys. Like that's what you need.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I think going after a, quote, another superstar, another max deal type of guy, I mean, like we kind of ran through the guys that are even available. I think you need some of those next level down guys who fill some really important roles and are guys that you can rely on and trust, right? I mean, that's the name of the game with LeBron James, like you said. Trust. So yeah, I think the Jimmy Butler one is interesting. I think Kemba Walker's interesting too. Now Kemba Walker's saying that he will take less to stay in Charlotte. And you fall in love with a town. You've only been one franchise, all that, and maybe also you like being the show to a certain extent. But at some point, you want to win, right? You want to get into the postseason for crying out loud and at least see what the playoffs are like. They were close. They almost did it. But it's not going to last long in Charlotte, it seems to me.
Upcoming free agents that aren't superstar caliber guys that I think would be great fits for the Lakers. Thaddeus Young from the Indiana Pacers. Mm-hmm. But somebody's going to pay him to be a one or two type guy, so I don't think that's necessarily in the mix, but I think he would be a great complement to Anthony Davis. Patrick Beverly.
Yep.
Al Horford. Chris Middleton, as you mentioned. Nikolai Mirotic is a free agent, so I think he would be a very good, stretch four off the bench type guy. JJ Redick is a free agent. Danny Green, depending on what Kawhi Leonard does, if Danny Green is available. I mean, Danny Green's a guy where that's a perfect example of a veteran. You don't care if Danny Green's on your team when it's February 1.
What about Kawhi Leonard?
Oh, buddy. I mean, now we're talking, can the Lakers match the Warriors' most recent run if Kawhi Leonard goes to the Lakers?
Well, I don't think so because LeBron James is too old to keep it going for that long.
I just don't buy the narrative of LeBron James being old yet. I just think that LeBron James has never lost a step. And I'm not going to ever believe that he can until he does. He will. All good things come to an end. But it's like we've laughed in the car talking about this. LeBron James has never had a break. LeBron James is on a break right now. Imagine what LeBron James's body looks like right now. If all he's doing is working out and eating and he's not having to be worn down. Usually LeBron James is resting for the first time right now. He's been resting for months.
Yeah, it probably looks like me.
I mean, LeBron James is going to be as physically formidable as we have ever seen him right out the gates in the beginning of the NBA season this next year. It will be a spectacle to behold.
It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio.
I do love what we're about to get into, though, because I do think the other side of this is actually to steal a line from Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo. They always talk about their league pass teams. Well, I think the New Orleans Pelicans just became a league pass team. I have no idea if they're going to go even – they're probably going to just be like a 500 team. They might be in the mix to win like 43, 44 games next year, but they're going to be really fun to watch.
Well, if you're talking about losing Anthony Davis and being in the mix to be 20 wins better than you were this season.
Well, right.
But
because you're getting guys to play.
The obvious thing is LeVar Ball, Brandon Ingram, and Josh Hart.
Lonzo Ball.
What did
Loud
I
and
say?
clear, Tommy.
I said LeVar.
Yeah, right.
LeVar
Freudian
Ball
slip because
playing.
LeVar's
Yes.
going nuts.
Lonzo Ball, of course, Brandon Ingram, and Josh Hart. I thought that Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram were both better in year two than they were in their rookie years. That's good because they were not good.
Truth.
Their first year. You like to see the progress. That's good. There's a lot of potential there. I think Brandon Ingram. I think Brandon Ingram is a long shot to live up to his second overall selection status.
I agree.
And I think Lonzo Ball is still sort of a wild card. I think he plays defense, I think, better than I thought that he would. His passing ability, we know, is outstanding, and his shot is worse than I thought it was going to be.
Yep.
And so he is still very much what do we got here. I think Josh Hart is fantastic. Again, it's relative to expectations. He wasn't a top 5 pick. And so, a guy that all of a sudden you go, well, this kid can really play. That's great. Does that mean that he's an all-star at some point? I don't know. But then you got Zion Williamson coming to town, and then potentially
loud and clear, Tommy.
Whoever the 4th overall pick might be.
R.J. Barrett or John Morant are probably the two most likely.
Yeah, and I've even seen a Cameron Reddish.
Reddish,
R.J. Barrett.
Who's the kid from Virginia?
Darius Garland from Vanderbilt is high, and you're right. There's a guy
Hunter
from Virginia as well. Or, and I've heard this as well, they got an incredibly young group now with this whole thing. You leverage that 4th overall pick in the next 72 hours. The NBA draft is on Thursday. Into the acquisition of a veteran, because the other thing you got here is you're not paying that much money for this group of guys, given the fact that they're so young. And so, can you attract a free agent or create a trade to get, like you said, you got to have a veteran presence at some sort, but you don't just, with this team, you don't need merely a veteran. You need a veteran who is great, who can play ball. And I don't know who you're going to get to come to New Orleans to join this group, but I think there's some intrigue when you talk about the number 1 overall pick, 2 number 2 overall picks, and that group. And by the way, you know who else is in New Orleans right now? Julius Randle, Drew Holiday, Jahlil Okafor.
They had no right.
And so there are guys who aren't nobodies already that are still on this roster that, Jahlil Okafor looked like a huge bust. Well, guess what? He looks less like that now. He looks like he's coming along and progressing.
He was just so hurt.
Yeah. And so, there is huge upside, and I'm totally with you on the NBA pass. The NBA pass. This is a team that is just so, hugely interesting to watch and to see what they become. I don't know. Big job for the head coach. You got it's almost like an expansion team where you're not starting over. You're certainly not starting from scratch, but a bunch of guys are coming together that have never played before, and you're going to have to draw up something entirely new than what you've ever done in order to get the style that you get.
Well, first of all, to your point, it's a great point about the fact that they don't have any super high-paid players now. Drew Holiday's making $25 million next year, which is a little bit too much for him. But I actually think that Drew Holiday is I think he's one of the most underrated players in the league. I think Drew Holiday, if you were to really mark it out, like the top 35 players in the league, I think you'd have to consider Drew Holiday in that top 30, 35 range.
And even if he's slightly overpaid, you happily pay him this much when this is the roster that you have.
Totally. And then the other guy, Solomon Hill, that contract comes off the books. Julius Randle did opt out today. He had a player option, so he will be a free agent. Okay. That's interesting because I think Julius Randle is – if I'm the Pelicans, you have to just weigh – you got to weigh your immediate and your very near future, because I think that if you could draft, you're going to draft Zion Williamson almost undoubtedly to this roster. If you take that number 4 pick and you're going to turn it into a veteran guy or a couple veteran guys, or you take R.J. Barrett with that pick, I think the combination of Zion Williamson, Julius Randle, Lonzo Ball, R.J. Barrett, I mean, that is a lot of athleticism. That's what Lonzo Ball needs. Then he never has to shoot the ball ever. Mm-hmm. He can just straight play fast break alley-oop game just all day. And if you can give him, I mean, who's going to stand strong defensively, especially during the regular season, when Julius Randle's filling one lane and Zion Williamson's filling the other? That is as ferocious of a rim attack as you can find. Yeah. You lose, I mean, you're probably sacrificing a lot of shooting compared to a lot of other NBA teams. You can beat teams up like that. I mean, when you really look at it, when you talk about Lonzo Ball, Drew Holiday, Brandon Ingram, Julius Randle, Jahlil Okafor, and then you add Zion Williamson, and then whoever's the 4th pick, let's say R.J. Barrett, then you got Josh Hart. That's a pretty good top 8, honestly.
It is really good. The only thing, and you just mentioned it, but it especially in today's NBA, you are missing shooting. I mean, you got to have it. You got to. And nobody on that team is going to give that to you.
Maybe Brandon Ingram. I'm so I have never been high on Brandon Ingram. You and me and your brother have had screaming matches about how much I think Kyle Kuzma and Brandon Ingram are overrated because they play for Los Angeles Lakers. But I think of any of the guys that were the young players on the Lakers, the guy who has a chance to be better than he was in LA simply because he does not play for the Lakers anymore is Brandon Ingram.
Yeah.
Because everybody, I mean, how old is Brandon Ingram even? 21 maybe?
He's 22, 23, right?
How many years has he been in the league? He's 21.
Okay.
21 years old. I mean, and, so it's all a matter of perspective, right? Like everybody expects this guy to be the poor man's KD. He's the next Kevin Durant somehow because of the way he's built. And it's just not the expectation.
Yeah.
If we readjust the expectation, I mean, he was 18.3 points and 5.1 rebounds per game last year.
Yeah, he was better. He was certainly better.
I mean, that's fine.
Well,
and if you're putting up 18 a game, when Drew Holiday is probably also scored around that, and Zion Williamson presumably is going to get a lot of buckets, then you're all right. It's when you're trying to carry the Lakers and you're on primetime TV every night and you just not Kevin Durant. That's when you just get eaten alive.
And, I mean, you even saw, that where he's defending that inbounds pass so doggedly towards the end of the year, and you go, wow, look at the length. Look at what he brings. By the way, but my saying that I think he's a long shot to live up to his second overall expectation is not me saying he's a bust, and it's certainly not me saying that he's, first of all, not good now, because he is good now, or couldn't be outstanding at some point because he could be outstanding. Is he potential league MVP type of guy? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
And so, but that doesn't.
He could be an all-star, right?
Sure, he could be an all-star. I mean, that's and if he's an all-star, then you're thrilled to have him. So it's not. I don't think that this is. I think it's a good get for New Orleans for sure.
I got a couple more things to say, so let's get out because
okay.
I want to talk about the way that one and dones influence our expectations for players in a perhaps negative fashion.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, but we also know that you're going to pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it. Well, not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with a staff of specialists that can answer any question. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and, are you ready, lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in Western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River. Springtime is the time to buy a new Polaris off-road vehicle. During the spring sales event, rebates go as high as $1,500 and financing is as low as 3.99%. Live your life wide open in a high-performance RZR. Tackle anything from mountains to mud holes on a legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger, or take on any task or trail in a versatile Polaris General. Whatever you're looking for, now is the time to take your pick from the off-road's best-selling lineup. See Polaris.com or your Polaris dealer for rebates up to $1,500 and financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months during the Polaris Spring Sales event at Kurtz Polaris. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. Recreate the right way with Kurtz Polaris online at kurtzpolaris.com. Offer valid in U.S. through 5/31/19 on new 2015 through 2019 vehicles. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet. Never drink and ride. Hey everybody, Ryan Tootell, and I'm here with Josh of the Advocates Injury Law Firm. Josh, there's a lot of lawyers in this area. What makes you different?
At the Advocates, we primarily focus on injury cases. That gives us the experience and the knowledge to correctly evaluate your case and work with insurance companies and other attorneys so you get exactly what you deserve to make you whole again. We take really good care of our clients, and we're going to fight for every single dollar you deserve.
Call 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez, happy to be with you. The best of Montana scored 6 second-half touchdowns on the way to the Treasure State's 5th straight win in the 26th edition of the Knights of Columbus Badlands Bowl in Miles City Saturday. Featured Grizz wide receiver Jesse Owens got 3 touchdowns after halftime as the Montana All-Stars scored 41 straight points to rally for a 41-14 win over their counterparts from North Dakota. The win moves Montana to 20-6 overall in the all-time series.
Owens, a dynamo out of Billings West, caught his first touchdown from future Montana State quarterback Blake Thielen, who's out of Great Falls High. Owens caught his next 2 from future Grizz quarterback Chris Brown, a Bozeman product. Future Montana defensive back Trevin Gradney, a Billings West product himself, took an interception, 38 yards for a touchdown. And Helena's Zach Spuroff put the exclamation point on Montana's win with a punt return touchdown with less than 5 minutes to play.
Idaho has fired men's head basketball coach Don Verlin after he was placed on administrative leave following a consultant's report that found potential NCAA violations. Idaho announced the firing Friday. Verlin was placed on administrative leave on May 28th. The school said the decision was made with the university president and interim athletic director. Idaho self-reported 3 minor NC2A violations in early May. Knew we weren't going to get just one segment out of this thing. Just knew it. Anthony Davis for the Lakers. What does it mean? For the Lakers, for the Pelicans, for the NBA. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We're broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy online at kurtzpolaris.com. You can find us on Twitter at Skyline Sports MT for your up-to-the-moment Big Sky Conference sports journalism, sports news, at 102.9 ESPN. Follow the station, and at Gus Tootell. That is me. All right, Coulter. What did you want to say?
I didn't talk about this at all this weekend, which is interesting.
It's because you were busy racking up 90 holes of golf.
That's right. It's actually funny as you grow older. Like, when you hang out with your friends all the time, you know what they're doing, so you don't ever have to, ask them. Generally, I know exactly what you're doing in your life all the time because I see you every single day. And
doesn't stop my wife from asking.
Well, she's a very considerate wife.
Yes.
Just very curious to know what everybody's doing all the time. No, but then you have your buddies that you only see once or twice a year. And so you just spend so much time. One of my best friends was just here in town from Denver, and we didn't talk about the NBA till lunch today. Even though he got in on Friday.
Yep.
Because, what's going on with work? What's going on with your wife? What's going on with your kids? How's life,
That's not how millennials are supposed to act. Talk about yourself.
I'm not a millennial, though, bro.
Oh, yeah, you are.
No, I'm more like 46 years old, and you're more like 63.
I feel
That's why we get along so well, because we're both delayed so much. I want to talk about, just briefly, you were mentioning Brandon Ingram living up to the expectations of what the number 2 pick should be.
Yeah.
And I thought I said, could he become an all-star? And you said, well, certainly he probably could. He's only 21 years old. But there was so much controversy about the rule of letting kids go straight from high school. And then there was so much controversy when that rule is overturned and you make kids go to college. And it was sort of this polarizing thing. But when you really looked at that generation of high school guys, call it Kevin Garnett in 1995 through Kendrick Perkins and Sean Livingston in 2007. About a 12-year span when there was usually 5, 6, 7 high school guys drafted in the first round every year. And I would say that more than 50% of those guys became good NBA players, whether it was along the lines of, a Danny Granger and Al Harrington or a Kobe Bryant or a Kevin Garnett. There's a lot of variance there, certainly. But Danny Granger was an all-star. I mean, Danny Granger was a good player. And Al Harrington, solid in the league for a long time. But I thought about a guy like Jermaine O'Neal. Jermaine O'Neal sort of toiled in the NBA for years and years. When he was 18 to 24, And then when he was 25, he's still only 25, and then he went on to be an all-star like 8 or 10 times.
He was such an outstanding player through the middle and latter stages of his career.
Outstanding.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Outstanding. But that's what happens when you get to put 6 or 7 years under your belt. And sometimes when you're just kind of like the guy everybody's waiting to blossom, but you didn't have to play. What I'm getting at is that Brandon Ingram has way higher expectations as Jermaine O'Neal did coming out of high school, because Brandon Ingram went to Duke. Brandon Ingram was on national TV. So now all of a sudden, as the number 2 overall pick, he has massive expectations, which are justified to a certain extent. What I'm getting at is sometimes I feel like we eat these guys alive, and sometimes the narrative and the public noise makes it so that even the teams don't give them the proper time to develop. Because if you just have Brandon Ingram and you just let him develop, by the time he's 25 years old, he's going to be scoring 22, 23 points per game. How could he not?
Yeah.
But I do think that the expectations can derail you. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes, I do, and I think it's true, and it's the expectations, it's the pressure, and again, I think a lot of this comes down to fit. I think you talk about fit on NBA teams. I mean, I think there's nowhere in sports that fit is more influential to your own individual success than in the NFL. I think in the NFL, if you get
especially certain positions
into the right slot with the right coaches, and you have a skill set that suits the things that are going. It's unbelievable how many guys have elite skill sets that are not catered to in the particular schemes that they're in. Okay? And it's not just so simple as going, oh, well, now we're going to run a 3-4. You know, it's a lot more nuanced than that. I'm not sitting here not giving coaches credit that they don't understand what guys are good at and what they're not good at. But what I am saying is when you're building a scheme for 11 or 22 guys or whatever it is, you got to try and maximize what your guys do well, but you also have to have some principles at work that are just the way that you do things, and some guys aren't as good at those things. Point being, the same is true in basketball, and that, to me, even more than pressure or expectation, although I do think it's more impactful in the NBA because guys are so much younger. That, you know, when you show up in Los Angeles and you're 19 years old and the number 2 overall pick, it does matter. It does influence what's going on. It does. I, though, don't think if I understood the innuendo here, I don't know that I agreed with it from you. You said Brandon Ingram's got more expectations coming because he played at Duke. He went and played at Duke. I think kids coming out of high school have more expectations. And the reason is because my thinking is, holy cow, you didn't even have to go to college. You're that good that you're coming in here and you're going to be this great?
Totally, but also I get what you're saying. On the flip side, though, I think people give a lot more leeway to the developmental angle of it, especially with bigger guys.
And that is a very fair point, too. I mean, it is only 1 year of basketball, and by the way, it still ain't even close. Not even the same thing as NBA basketball.
Not even close.
Yes.
This is what people don't understand. Like when you're playing at Duke, you're playing 38 games. You're living in the dorms. You got people cooking for you. You got
and even the game,
totally.
Man, the sport of basketball at the collegiate level
the game is completely different.
Yes.
But also, you're taking a bus to North Carolina State, Wake Forest. You're not. I mean, when you're 19 years old, how are you going to pack for a trip that's a 13-day road trip in the NBA? You don't know how to do that. You don't know how to manage your life.
I do. I got my clothes on.
Well, yeah, you're a special example. Yeah. Last thought on this. I mentioned, and you just reinforced this exact point, that I think that Brandon Ingram has a chance to make a big jump simply from not playing in LA. And the thing is, we already saw that. So they did an impromptu, anonymous poll of all the guys that vote in the All-NBA honors. And there's 5 guys on the first team, 5 guys on the second team, 5 guys on the third team.
Yeah.
The guy who got the most votes that wasn't on the first 3 teams was Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
Guess who was the 17th guy? The second most vote getter that wasn't on the All-NBA team.
Well, are you going to tell me?
D'Angelo Russell.
Okay. And then
Great example of a guy who the world decided, oh, man, you played in L.A. and you're a bust when you're 20. And then he goes out and leads the Nets to the playoffs and averaged 22 points per game last year. And now when you're the Nets, you're like, well, look at this asset we got. We got a 21-year-old point guard averaged 22 points per game, led us to the playoffs after half a dozen years of futility before this. Exactly what we're both agreeing on. A change of scenery can be profound.
It can. And significant, too. It's not going to New York. It's not going to Chicago. It's going to New Orleans. And I don't know. I think you could live a pretty good life in New Orleans as an NBA basketball player. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio.
I want to talk about this. So let's go. Let's get out.
Okay. Well, hold on. Let's do this. We're going to keep going on the basketball thing because I got a couple of questions. Then we'll get into both the U.S. Open and into some football stuff. All right. Just keep riding with us, people. We're going to get you there. We're going to take you home.
Tootell and Nuanez, all get.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Alpine Touch makes the perfect gift this summer or any time of year. If you are traveling, bring a gift that is distinctly Montana and give your loved ones some of the best spices anywhere around. From the Alpine Touch Pick 4 Spice Pack to the All-Purpose Twin Pack to the mouth-watering sunflower shoots to Alpine Touch gift cards. Alpine Touch makes the perfect Montana present. Available at retail locations around the state or online for a limited time. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, pump it up, pump it up.
What goes perfectly with a crisp and delicious salad? Energy drinks, of course. At Town Pump, you can grab your Bang and Rain 16-ounce energy drinks, 2 for $4. And don't forget your greens with a chef salad in the deli, only $4.49. Town Pump Food Stores, proud to be part of our community.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up, oh yeah.
You're a big league fan. You expect big league service. At the Desperado, you get exactly that. With 35 flat screens, ice-cold brews on tap, and Missoula's #1 wings, you're free to sit back and enjoy every pitch. This summer, make the Desperado your baseball home away from home. Cool off after work, relax on the weekends, soak in some great food and drinks, and watch your team make yet another great push for October. And hey, if yours can't do it, there's plenty of other teams and fun to go around at the Desperado Sports Tavern on South Russell across from the Y.
Hey, Ryan Tootell here from Tootell Nuanez. We are on every weekday from 4 to 6 in the afternoon right here on 102.9 ESPN Radio, as you might already know. Very convenient for everybody traveling to and fro in the afternoons. We also know not everybody does that, so if you need to listen to us when we're not on the radio, we've got you covered there too, don't we, Coulter?
If you missed the show, you can always find it on every one of your favorite podcasting platforms, from iTunes to Spotify to the TuneIn Radio app. Or you can just go to 1029ESPN.com and click on the podcast tab.
The Tootell Nuanez podcast, available when you want it, wherever you are, however you consume your podcasts. We're there for you. Sports from around the state of Montana and even around the nation, but relevant to Montana. The Tootell and Nuanez podcast. Get it when you want it, where you want it.
Tootell and Nuanez podcast, sponsored in part by the Wingate by Wyndham. Let the Wingate by Wyndham in Missoula make you feel at home, even when you're not.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Love it or hate it? Cool or lame? That's the game. It's Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We're broadcasting live from the Chris Polaris studios. Chris Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. On the World Wide Web, perhaps you've heard of it, 1029ESPN.com, Facebook/ESPN Missoula, SkylineSportsMT.com. Coulter, the Toronto Raptors had their championship parade today. 1.5 million people estimated to have been in attendance some way, some form at this. I was looking at pictures of this and these things just seem to get bigger and bigger each year, and more people turn out for them. I was in Seattle when the Seahawks won their Super Bowl, and then went down on what's probably the coldest day in the history of Seattle. I mean, it doesn't get cold there, and it was properly cold. But went down there for the parade. They delayed the start of the parade by like an hour and a half because they just couldn't physically get all the people in that they were trying to get in. There was just train car after train car of people packed on to come into the city for the parade. And that was like 750,000 people. It was like half of this. Here's my question to you. Would you find this fun or would you hate this to be going to one of these? And I'm not because, you love the Raptors or whatever, just like to be in this.
This is such an interesting question for me particularly.
Yes, because I know what I think about the answer is going to be, but you go ahead.
I was thinking about this when the series was still going and people were just raging outside Jurassic Park, and every time they showed Jurassic Park, the whole thing just exploded. Everybody's mobbing, they're moshing, they're jumping up and down, cheering, whooping, yelling. And I was thinking about this when we were at the Pearl Jam concert last time. I was like so content to feel the energy of everybody else around me doing that while not being compelled to do it whatsoever, actually never wanting to do it at all for no other reason than I just wanted to watch everybody else. And I think that's exactly where I would be with both Jurassic Park and the parade celebrations. I would enjoy going thoroughly. I do not think I would be raging in any form or fashion, only because I would be so awestruck by watching everybody else do it.
Yeah, I put a pretty big separation. If you put me in Jurassic Park during the games, I would be crowd surfing through there. Yeah, that to me would be a blast.
Yeah, you're much more exuberant and outgoing.
I think it would be. I mean, no one's gonna say, like, well, do you want to be inside of the NBA Finals and actually attending the game or not? You're gonna go to the game, but I would have probably more personal fun in Jurassic Park, where you can walk around, where you can yell. It's like there's no. You're running into people. You don't have to be in your seat, in your chair. Who knows who you're surrounded by? You can find people of like mind, of like exuberance to be with, and you can yell and scream and do all the things that you certainly can do inside, but it's just a different vibe out there. The parade, sheer gridlock. Like there aren't enough toilets on Earth to deal with streets of humans packed in there. I mean, I don't know what you do. And so I was fortunate in Seattle. I had a friend of mine who just straight booked a hotel room. Like, I don't care. We're getting a hotel for the day. Like, not staying the night, booked it anyway, just so that there's a home base to go to throughout the day. It was a lifesaver, made the experience a lot more enjoyable. But in terms of watching, like, why do you watch sports? Because you want to see athletes do amazing things. And while it's cool to see them in person, they're not doing the thing. They're just riding on a car or a bus or whatever it is in front of you. And it's like, it's cool because of the civic part of it. And
totally
something like Seattle or Toronto, where it's the first time that you've had a championship in the city and all that. So I get that and I enjoyed it. But, I don't need to be in it quite like that to have the time. Go ahead.
It's very I'm looking at a picture right here of Babe Ruth on our studio wall.
Yeah.
And I think baseball players more than any other athletes, pre-World War II or maybe even just pre-1960s, pre-full-fledged network television, baseball players were titans, legends. And I think that like the pandemonium that would surround the Babe and the New York Yankees having a parade,
ticker tape parade, all that,
I mean,
yeah.
Because you haven't ever seen Babe Ruth, or if you have, you've seen him from row 517, Yankee Stadium, hundreds and hundreds of feet away.
That's a great point.
And you might have seen an illustration on a card of him, but not like the photograph, not like the motion picture, the moving picture. Now, I mean, let's put it like this. If you saw Babe Ruth walking down the street in 1927, you might faint. Anybody might faint. You just be like, well, that guy is a legend. He is bigger than life. Now, if we saw LeBron James, we'd be like, well, that's LeBron James. But, like, it wouldn't be this crazy pandemonium, right? It's like
Speak for yourself.
But I mean, it's like
diving at the knees, holding on. Give me a
there's still a lot of acts, like music acts, that induce, close to pandemonium in terms of the concerts and stuff like that. But there's nothing like Michael Jackson in 1987. Yeah. I mean, you had people full-fledged passing out, have to go to the hospital because they're so excited to see somebody. I feel like this just lost a little bit of its allure because we do have so much exposure on ourselves now.
One more question for you. The Golden State Warriors took out a full-page ad in the Toronto Star congratulating the Toronto Raptors on winning the championship. Is this cool or is this lame?
I thought it was cool when it first started happening. Now it's just a little bit overdone. Everybody does it now. It was cool and it was more unique and novelty.
Totally.
I thought that there's also different ways to do it.
I mean,
Montana State.
Yeah.
Montana State took out an ad. Let me get this right. One year, the Cats took out an ad congratulating the Grizz on something. I can't remember. I think it was in the Chronicle. But the picture was kind of a backhanded Bobcat player getting an interception. I think there's different ways to do it as well. Now it seems like everybody does this now, so you're kind of expected to do it, so it's lost its luster.
Totally. It's the first time that I saw a fan who I can't even remember. I don't know if it was a Wayne's World thing or whatever it was. I'm going way back on you now, like early 90s, where they would bow. You know what I mean? The we're not worthy.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The first time I saw a fan do that at a game, I about rolled over and busted a gut with laughter. Oh, that is the greatest. That's hilarious. When I see somebody do that now, I'm like, I saw it this year. It happened. Somebody did it. I was like, what are we doing? Like, we're still on this thing? And it was just it was almost like embarrassing to watch it happen. It's like, enough of this. I'm getting there with the paper ad. The paper ad, the first time I was like, okay, that's sweet. That's cool. That's a good gesture. At this point, like, find something else. Have the mayor send a gift basket over. Do something else. We got to be done with the paper ads. Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Hour 1 in the books, hour 2. Coming up. Some guy named Woodhead is a U.S. Open champion, and the Montana team wins the Badlands Bowl for the 5th consecutive time and 20th overall. We'll get into all of it. Some golf, some football next.
Yes, join the show on the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. Broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studio on ESPN Radio in Western Montana and across the state on SWX television. Here is Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez.
Hey, Tootell, Nuanez here. Can't tell you how many times we've heard the face for radio joke since we came on SWX television, but it's been a fun endeavor so far.
And now our esteemed producer Tommy is pushing the envelope even further. We got our own YouTube channel.
That's right. If you want to watch us every day from your computer, your tablet, your cell phone, you can check out Tootell and Nuanez on YouTube.
Tootell and Nuanez live every weekday from 4 to 6 in the afternoons on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula, SWX Montana statewide, and now around the planet Earth on YouTube.
At the Montana Club, our goal is to create a menu of mouth-watering food with variety to satisfy any craving. From the garden-fresh ingredients in our salads to our succulent, perfectly grilled Montana Club Angus steaks, we take pride in every detail that goes into preparing your food. Top off your meal with a premium cocktail, wine, or microbrew. Come as you are and satisfy your craving with our home-style breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get $50 off alignment when you purchase a set of 4 Open Range AT or Reputation tires. Book an appointment today at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time only. See details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds. Florence Coffee Co. knows you love the warm weather. With summer days here and the kiddos out of school, don't forget we serve all-natural Italian sodas. Offered in flavors like huckleberry, cherry, or raspberry, Florence Coffee's all-natural Italian sodas are the perfect summer treat. Stop by for a refreshing ice drink at any of our Flowco locations throughout western Montana and visit FlorenceCoffeeCo.com.
The best flavor under the big sky. Florence Coffee Company.
The splash of launching a new boat, the quiet of a favorite campsite, the noisy fun of a family barbecue on your new deck. Whatever summer sounds like to you, make it happen with a personal loan from Farmers State Bank. 9 locations to serve you, or start the loan application process online at farmersebank.com. Farmers State Bank, your Montana bank since 1907, an equal housing lender and member FDIC.
Hey folks, Ryan Tootell, and I'm here with Josh of The Advocates. Josh, do most injury accidents end up in court?
Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court through a fair negotiation with an insurance company. However, sometimes it is necessary. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get a fair settlement. Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court with a fair negotiation with the insurance company. However, I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get the right settlement for you.
It's Josh at The Advocates, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez, ESPN Sports Center. The best of Montana scored 6 second-half touchdowns on their way to a Treasure State's 5th straight win in the 26th edition of the Knights of Columbus Badlands Bowl in Miles City Saturday. Future Grizz wide receiver Jesse Owens got 3 touchdowns after halftime as the Montana All-Stars scored 41 straight points to rally for a 41-14 win over their counterparts from North Dakota. The win moves Montana to 20-6 in the all-time series.
Owens, a shifty dynamo out of Billings West, caught his first touchdown from future Montana State quarterback Blake Thielen of Great Falls High. Owens caught his next 2 from future Grizz quarterback Chris Brown, a Bozeman product. Future Montana defensive back Trevin Gradney, who's also a Billings West product, took an interception, 38 yards for a touchdown, and Helena's Zach Spearoff put the exclamation point on Montana's win with a punt return for a score with less than 5 minutes to play.
Idaho has fired their head men's basketball coach, Don Verlin, after he was placed on administrative leave following a consultant's report that found potential NCAA violations. Idaho announced the firing on Friday. Verlin was placed on administrative leave May 28th. The school said the decision was made after the university president and interim athletic director got together. Idaho self-reported 3 minor NCAA violations in early May.
And finally, the Missoula Osprey are 2-1. Early on in the season, they posted a 9-0 win in Great Falls to take the series 2-1.
Now they always say congratulations. Work so hard, forgot how to vacation. They ain't never had the dedication.
Now from the Coach Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez.
If you missed anything on the podcast, you can check it out on the TuneIn Radio app, iTunes, Spotify, your favorite podcasting locales. The podcast is available thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. You want to call? Do it. 329-1899. All guests join us via the Range Brothers RV phone line. And Colter, it was maybe not as dramatic as it could have been, but I think it was still pretty impressive nonetheless as Gary Woodland goes 13 under, led the final 3 rounds of the U.S. Open and wins his first ever major by 3 strokes over Brooks Koepka. Woodland 13 under, Brooks Koepka 10 under, the rest of the field 7 under or worse. There's a lot of things that I kind of think about this. I'll start with Gary Woodland, who is the winner, and so he gets to shine, and I expected, not so much because it's Gary Woodland, but because any guy who's never won, especially a major, and Gary Woodland it's not like Ricky Fowler, right, who's been in the hunt on Sundays and won a bunch of non-major tournaments. I mean, Gary Woodland is a bit of a journeyman PGA golfer, very good. He's been he's made a great career of it. But, he's 35 years old and, does not have anything like the name recognition of a bunch of the guys, even though from what it sounds like and what it appears, he's very well liked on tour, which is cool. I enjoy seeing that, a guy who, people seem to really have an affinity for, and a bunch of the players. I mean, Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Matt Kuchar waiting around at the 18th green to greet him as he was coming down the stretch. So I thought that was great. But I thought when he has a one-stroke lead coming into Sunday with Justin Rose, who is a top, number 3 in the world right now, Justin Rose, something like that, certainly a top 5, who has been there before, I thought 100% that it would be Gary Woodland who would cave to the pressure, who would fade down the stretch, and Justin Rose would be the guy who would, be able to assert his dominance, and it was exactly the opposite. And Gary Woodland, burying a 30-foot putt on 18 when all he had to do was 3-putt was just sort of the microcosmic example of what his entire 4 days had been. And obviously probably the shot of the tournament on 17th green, where he's got, a 90-foot putt. He decides to chip it up and over and almost holes it, guarantees that he's going to, par that hole. He had at the time a 2-stroke lead. Even in the event of a Brooks Koepka birdie, he would still be up 1 going into a par 5, which you would certainly expect to at least par. He, of course, birdied it and wins by 3. I thought that was tremendous under pressure, and to see him finish like that was impressive to me.
There's a lot of things that were impressive about this. First of all, I thought it was very interesting to watch Brooks Koepka as the hunter. I got a whole section on this, so don't blow it for me yet. That is the 100% takeaway for me from this tournament. That very thing. Fascinating. But, did you know about Gary Woodland's sort of backstory, his trials and tribulations? His dad had a heart attack playing golf in 2009. I believe they were together. His dad died and then got brought back to life. He basically went, they call it coded. Yeah. The line's flat. And then they jumped him back to life. He had triple bypass and is now among the living.
And I know that he had a miscarriage with the twins. One
of his 2 twins. Yeah. I think it was a boy and a girl. I can't remember if it was the boy or the girl that passed away, but lost one during the birth. Only one survived, but now his wife's pregnant with twins again. I believe that the miscarriage was right around Father's Day, the first time around. So I think that this is obviously an anniversary time where it's sort of haunting for him and his family. So all those things are really cool, man. And then really cool that he was able to overcome those things. Those are not cool. Those are bad things.
I think
very
we
cool.
Understand the spirit.
Very cool that he overcame those,
and to win on Father's Day.
With his dad there.
That's great.
I think the thing that kind of got washed over is there were so many guys that were in low numbers this week. A bunch of guys 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way up to Brooks Koepka being, what did he finish, 10 or 11 over 10 under, and Woodland with 13 under. What 13 under is actually the U.S. Open record.
Yes,
for the most under par, breaking Tiger Woods' epic performance at Pebble Beach back in 2000. The difference is Tiger won that tournament by 14 or 15 strokes because the rest of the field was over par. Regardless, a really, really good weekend of golf for Gary Woodland, but I also thought, we talked all last week about the difference between hanging on to win and surging to win, and how do you deal with the pressure if you are the front runner. And I thought Gary Woodland, not only did he deal with the pressure, not only did he deal with a charging Brooks Koepka, but he went out there and let it rip. I mean, that 3-wood he hit on, I think it was 14 on that par 5, where he stuck it up there and then it got up and down for birdie. I mean, that is it takes some fortitude to hit that shot with the lead at the U.S. Open. And 100%. To pull out your wedge and chip off the green and get it up there and get a par and not give a stroke back, huge as well. And then it's always anticlimactic. Like when the guy who's in the final group has a 3-shot lead, and Koepka's already in, he's at 10. So the only thing that can really happen is watching this guy who's in the final group blow it. And then when the guy goes up there and all he needs to do is not triple bogey it and you're going to win. It's sometimes like anticlimactic where the guy 3-putts, it takes a 5 and drops a stroke, but he still wins. I thought it was just such a resounding walk-off for Woodland to just drill the putt, and you get to see the full expression of emotion. And I don't know. I found sometimes when guys are just kind of one-hit wonders, when they just come out of nowhere and they win a major, who knows what's going to happen with Gary Woodland moving forward. But a lot of times when you see guys like this, you're just like, well, that guy, he is just a one-hit wonder. He just got hot. And, cute story. But whatever. I found Gary Woodland very appealing, though. I thought he has a lot of confidence, a lot of swagger. I think he has some, legitimate star power.
Yes. The way he carried himself, the wry smile that you would get from time to time, and even walking up 18, I think this is a new thing that guys are being taught because I'm seeing it so much, but walking with your hands in your pockets, like walking just, okay, we're just going to plod through this thing. Because there's no clock in golf, you know what I mean? It's just a matter of going from one shot to the next, but I mean, coming up 18 with a 2-stroke lead, I mean, he's on in 3 from 30 feet. He's won the tournament. He took his time. I thought he carried himself in a very he didn't look like a first-time winner. Let's say that. He didn't look like a first-time winner to me at all. You opened up the bag, though, to the thing that I thought was the most – it was my biggest takeaway. Brooks Koepka has shifted in my mind because of this tournament into a realm that I did not have him in, even though he didn't win this tournament. All the tournaments that he's won have been him in the front.
Big numbers on Thursday and Friday. Solid while everybody else falls apart on Saturday and Sunday.
And he's won by a lot. He's won by a little, but he's always won being in the last group as the leader and the front runner who finished everybody else off. And that is a skill unto itself. And nobody can question the run that he's been on these last 2 seasons holding 4 majors. For the first time, though, we watched Brooks Koepka sitting there 4 shots back coming into Sunday and watched him just go bonkers. Birdied 4 of the first 5 holes he played, got to within, fortunately for Gary Woodland, he also, and this is very much to his credit, birdied 2 of the first 3 to maintain a lead. If he had teed off later, all of a sudden he steps to the tee box, he's tied with Brooks Koepka. I mean, what are you thinking at that point? You haven't even played a shot and your 4-stroke lead gone. So, but to watch him do what he did, and Brooks Koepka hit some bad shots throughout the day yesterday, but he recovered magnificently from those. But he was lurking in a way that I've never seen from him before. And for the first time, he didn't even win, right? So on one hand, you'd say, well, it was a failed attempt. Well, yeah, it was. But again, I give Gary Woodland a ton of credit for the way that he played. Brooks Koepka came out there and looked like 100% the alpha guy to beat and was as intimidating and fear-inducing in the golf sense as anybody I've seen since Tiger Woods. I mean, just surely the way that he went about it with just a certain ferocity. And I know that people who don't follow golf are like, you are a moron, Tootell. What are you talking about? These guys out there drinking tea, caring. But if you watch just the maniacal nature in which he goes around and plays around at golf with the expectation that I am going to take you down, the hunter and the prey, that's what I saw out of Brooks Koepka. And even though he didn't win the tournament, it does nothing to change what I feel like I saw out of him. And this looks to me now like we are more. There are going to be more majors, significantly more majors coming to Brooks Koepka.
The crazy part too, though, is that he birdied 4 out of his first 6 on Sunday. Excuse me, I'm looking at his round 1 scorecard. Oh, but still, 4 of his first 5 on Sunday. But holes 12 through 18 did not treat him well this week. He only had 1 birdie, 12 through 18.
Well, and it didn't treat a lot of guys well.
No, totally.
The front 9 was much harder.
The point I'm making, though, is that Koepka had a birdie putt on 14 that was makeable. He had a birdie putt on, it was either 15 or 16. He left 3 birdie putts in the last 6 holes on the course, and he was really mad. Oh, he didn't make them.
He was doing some negative self-talk that you might only see with Ryan Tootell walking off of 18. I mean, he was because he knew
he left some out there.
Well, and he knew he had to get that birdie to at least give himself a chance at 18. And as it turns out, well, here's the thing that you can never say. If you're Gary Woodland, you got a 2-stroke lead, step into 18 is so much different than having a 1-stroke lead. And even though he played a hugely safe final hole and then buried a putt, a 30-foot putt when you have to 2-putt and you run that thing 6 feet by, uh-oh. You know, what do we got here? I mean, we've seen it happen. We saw it happen to Dustin Johnson at Chambers Bay, basically give the tournament away to Jordan Spieth. But that possibility went out the door with that missed putt by Brooks Koepka on 18, which is why he was so fierce. Everybody's like, well, you would have lost by 2 instead of by 3. Well, no, that's not necessarily true. You got to make that there and apply that pressure and see what happens. And there's nothing that makes me think that Gary Woodland would not have come through in that moment. I mean, he was absolute nails all week.
You made a comment that Gary Woodland's already 35 years old, and I think that's interesting because it's so revealing into the state of golf and what we've seen happen over the last 10 years. First of all, we saw happen some 22 years ago when Tiger Woods ripped the face off of Augusta and won the Masters at 22 years old.
Yeah.
But that was a complete and utter anomaly until this generation of golfers that Tiger created changed the game. But there was really no one winning majors in their 20s, with the exception of Jack Nicklaus in his late 20s, Arnold Palmer maybe way late 20s. Other than that, you didn't win any majors until you were in your 30s.
Yeah.
And even
35 is the heart of your prime.
100%.
Maybe even the early part of your
and
prime.
even these guys, Dustin Johnson didn't win his first major till he's 32. It's only Jordan Spieth and Rory McIlroy win multiple majors when they're 22 years old that broke the mold.
Right.
Or I guess reshaped the mold that Tiger created.
That all of a sudden were the next generation of what Tiger did. Yeah.
And look at guys like, Mark O'Meara didn't win a major until he's like 47 years old. Phil Mickelson was in his 40s, and now Lefty's got, 6?
Yeah, he was in his 30s.
Late 30s?
Yeah.
But Phil Mickelson was considered the guy who couldn't break through for a good 15 years before he finally did.
Totally true.
I mean, Koepka's been on fire as of late. Koepka's 29, so he didn't win his first one until he's 28. What I guess what I'm saying is Gary Woodland's been playing a lot better.
Yeah.
I think he had 2 top 10s in majors the last 8 starts coming into this after never finishing in a top 10 his first 7 or 8 years on the tour. I think he's won 5 tournaments over the last 2.5 seasons about. So he's a legitimate player. And I think that this is a good feather in your cap, and we'll see if he can thrust himself into the mix of an already really impressive overall field of stars in the PGA right now.
Just one quick, just to make sure that we're exactly right. The 13 under that Gary Woodland had was the lowest U.S. Open score for a U.S. Open played at Pebble Beach, beating Tiger Woods.
Right. Sorry, I misspoke there.
But it's the third best ever, period. 2 16 unders, and both of those recently. One Brooks Koepka at Erin Hills, and the other one was Rory McIlroy in 2011. By the way, that Tiger went 12 under at Pebble Beach. He won by either 12 or 13.
I think he won by 13 strokes.
Nobody else
was a single
was
guy under par.
And he was at 12, so that's unbelievable. By the way, Walter Hagen, Coulter, 1919. He won the U.S. Open at the Brayburn Country Club in West Newton, Massachusetts. Would you like to take a stab at his score? 17 over.
17 over.
17 over. Won the U.S. Open. How about
Legend.
That? Hey, we're going to take a quick break. I want to spend some time on this. The Badlands Bowl, both what happened. Coulter watched some of this game and will walk us through seeing guys that are future Cats, future Grizz playing in an all-star football game and some thoughts on that and the state of affairs at Montana State. And I got a couple of questions as well that I want to get into on that, so we'll get into that right after this. Hey, it is golf season, boys and girls. Yes, it is fully here. 80 degrees a day. Get out to Canyon River Golf Club over there in East Missoula. Spectacular setting, great course, and also now brand new fleet of golf carts set up with the Shark Experience. I played out there this weekend, Father's Day, and the guy I played with couldn't believe what he was getting with the carts in terms of the interactive maps. You can sit there, touch screen, so you know every hole, distances to the pin, distances to the front of the back, distances to hazards. You also have Bluetooth capabilities. You can listen to your own music, or with satellite radio, you can listen to anything. I listen to some fantasy football talk, some Green Bay Packer talk, get a little classic rock going on. So you can listen to whatever you want to. It is phenomenal. It's a great experience. Surround sound within the cart really adds to the feel of the round and just the enjoyment of it all the way around. The new Shark experience in the golf carts, brand new carts out there at Canyon River. You can play for incredibly reasonable rates right now. You go online, CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. You book online. You're going to be blown away by the prices that you're able to get to play such a nice course. Canyon River Golf Club, CanyonRiverGolfClub.com.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Alpine Touch has been providing you with the distinct seasonings you know and love for decades. Now, Alpine Touch has something to help you unleash the freshness of all the delicious flavors you need to spice up any meal. Check out Alpine Touch's new coarse grinds, unleashing the fresh taste of the garlic pepper or all-purpose seasonings to please any nose or taste bud. Coarse grinds can be purchased by the pound at retail locations around the state or at alpinetouch.com. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up, pump it up.
Looking for a sweet summer deal? You'll find them at your local Town Pump. Right now, buy any size fountain drink for only $1. Grab a delicious corn dog while you're at it. 2 for $2.22. Town Pump Food Stores. Proud to be part of our community.
Town Pump, right down the road, pump it up, oh yeah.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from Tootell, Nuanez 1029 ESPN Missoula, here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom got me a great deal on an automatic car starter this winter. Now it's summer. What sort of stuff you guys got going on down there, Tom?
Well, Colter, coming into the summertime, we're picking up on the window tinting front. So if you need your windows tinted, give us a call. We'll get you scheduled up. Boats and ATVs are starting to come in full swing, and we're also starting to see the hot rods come out to play. Anything audio related, let us know. We'll get you taken care of.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
Hey folks, Ryan Tootell here, and I'm with Josh from the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, if our listeners have been injured in an accident, how can you help?
We're here to help you after a car accident by negotiating with insurance companies, recovering lost wages if you have any, and even getting you into a rental car if you need one. Call us today for a free consultation, and we'll get started helping you right away.
If you need help, get a hold of the Advocates. Call Josh at 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve an advocate.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez, 1029 ESPN Sports Center. The best of Montana scored 6 second-half touchdowns on the way to the Treasure State's 5th win in the 26th edition of the Knights of Columbus Badlands Bowl in Miles City on Saturday. Future Grizz wide receiver Jesse Owens got 3 touchdowns after halftime as the Montana All-Stars scored 41 straight points to rally for a 41-14 win over their counterparts from North Dakota. The win moves Montana to 20-6 in the all-time series.
Owens got one of those touchdowns from future Montana State quarterback Blake Thielen out of Great Falls. He got 2 more from Chris Brown, who hails from Bozeman. He'll play quarterback for the Grizz. Also, future Grizz defensive back Trevin Gradney had a pick 6 in the game. And in breaking news as of this afternoon, the Division I Football Championship Subdivision Athletic Directors Association, that's the FCF ADA for those counting, has selected Kent Haslam, Director of Athletics at the University of Montana, to serve as its president for the 2019-2020 season. Kent Haslam takes over for Bill Smith, who's the Director of Athletics at Bryant University.
Idaho has fired men's head basketball coach Don Verlin after he was placed on administrative leave following a consultant's report that found potential NC2A violations. Idaho announced the firing on Friday. Verlin was placed on administrative leave May the 28th. The school said the decision was made after the university president and interim director, athletic director. Idaho has self-reported 3 minor NC2A violations beginning in early May. Football. High school into college football. It is Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN. Why don't we do the thing now so I don't have to do it later?
Tootell and Nuanez, live on the stream at 1029ESPN.com. The stream is available thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. Now for the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez.
Thank you, Jim.
Hot.
It is time for our Prep Extra segment. Prep Extra segment brought to us by the Farmers State Bank, FarmersStateBank, Colter, as we talked about in the news, the Badlands Bowl, which is an all-star game, Montana versus North Dakota, high school kids who've graduated or are graduating, seniors heading on to college, played an all-star football game. Montana is 20-6 all-time in this game now after winning for the 5th consecutive time. They were down 14-0 at halftime and then scored 41 unanswered in the second half. 6 touchdowns by the Montana all-star team. And they win going away. Specifically, Jesse Owens, 3 touchdowns himself in the second half, catching 1 from a future Grizz and 2 from a future Bobcat, or vice versa. One from a future Cat.
Yep.
From a future
Yep. One from Blake Thielen, who's preferred walk-on quarterback out of Great Falls High, going to Montana State, and 2 from Chris Brown, who's from Bozeman, who is coming to Montana to play for the Grizzlies. Watched some highlights from this game, and Jesse Owens is as advertised. I think there's a sentiment among people that dive into recruiting that this year in Montana was a little bit down just because there wasn't a Gabe Sulser or Brock Osweiler or Matt Miller or Will Dissly type player. There wasn't that, Pac-12 FBS type guy. But there's some solid guys, and I think that there was also a lot of debate over who was the best recruit in Montana, because I think there was a whole bunch of pretty solid kids. And after watching Jesse Owens play football, helping Billings West all the way to the state championship game, and after watching him play basketball, have another standout basketball year, watching some of these highlights, I'm not sure if he's the best recruit in this class right now. I think he's the most ready to play. His highlights were legit. A lot of times high school kids are getting away with just being more athletic. He's very athletic. He's very fast. He's shifty, but he also runs good routes. The first touchdown he caught was a great sort of delayed post over the back of the end zone, made a diving catch. Good hands, showed good patience in running the route. He took a sort of an inside slant, just a short little route, and juked out a bunch of defenders and showed good speed, racing all the way to the end zone. So a diverse kid who I think has a lot of upside, a lot of skill, and I think that he's going to be a big-time contributor for the Grizz. I think he's a good one. I also think that, I said this since the winter, I think the Blake Thielen, I think both these quarterbacks are pretty good. Chris Brown's the one that everybody's a little bit hesitant on because Montana recruited him pretty hard and Montana State did not. Why is that? I think there's a lot you can hash out there. On one hand, Bozeman High School is in the same city as Montana State. So if they have and Jeff Choate's son played for Bozeman High, which means he got to go to a lot more of those games than normally you're allowed to go to.
Yeah.
So if Choate saw Chris Brown play live close to 10 times and didn't want to offer him, what's that say about Chris Brown? On the other hand, Jeff Choate hasn't proven he can recruit a quarterback yet, or at least they haven't proven they can have any consistency at quarterback yet. So maybe the fact that Montana State didn't recruit Chris Brown very hard is a knock on them. I don't know. That's going to be a really very interesting litmus test to see how Chris Brown becomes. But on the other side of this, I thought Blake Thielen was really good in high school. I thought he was a very exceptionally talented kid. I think he's big. He's got good athleticism. He's a first-team All-State basketball player. He's got a very good arm.
But here's the thing: is no good quarterbacks ever come out of Great Falls. So I don't know. You're gonna have to really break the mold.
Right? Yeah. No. I mean that's the thing, man. There was some tried and true trends in Montana that were just so unbreakable, and it's so fascinating to me how some of these trends have gone away. And I don't know if the trends have actually gone away or if the schools have just stopped trusting the trends forever and ever and ever. If you went and got whoever's the best quarterback in Great Falls, whether he's at Great Falls High or Great Falls CMR, he's good enough to play in the Big Sky, straight up. And a lot of times he's Ryan Leaf or Brady Leaf, or he's good enough to play in the Pac-12.
Or David.
Dave Dickinson, obviously. But also, if you just went and got the best offensive lineman at CMR, he's good enough to play in the Big Sky, straight up. Likely he'll probably become a starter. Yeah. You go get the best linebacker from Great Falls, same thing. Like you go get the best DN from Helena Capital, that dude's ready to go. He's ready to play. Yeah. And those trends have sort of gone away. I don't know if that's because of the quality of the players or the quality of the high school programs or just the lack of recruiting on the Montana and Montana State side of things. I don't know. That's an interesting conversation that could be had. But I thought the Montana All-Stars looked good. They traditionally dominate this game. I think it's unquestioned now that Montana has significantly more high school football talent than North Dakota. I mean, Montana's been wailing away. I mean, they played horrendously bad, turned the ball over a bunch of times in the first half, and then kicked it into gear and boat raced North Dakota in the Skylands Bowl.
That begs this question to me. And on one hand, I understand that this is somewhat foolish because, it'll be obvious. But first of all, we know that Montana and Montana State over the years have had some really, really good teams, some really high-end teams, and a lot of Montana talent that comes through the doors and has buoyed those programs, has carried those programs a long, long ways. But if Montana is clearly so much better than North Dakota when it comes to high school football talent, how is it that North Dakota State can keep doing what they do?
Well, North Dakota State has very, very few North Dakota products on it comparatively.
And at this point, again, it's a foolish question because that thing is rolling in such a way that they're getting kids who are getting, FBS, mid-major, even high-major offers and going, no, I would rather play it at North Dakota State. And, I mean, that happens at times at Montana. It happens at times at Montana State. But you're talking about kids who are going, no. My path to the NFL is better through these doors than it is through Kansas State, than it is through Iowa State, than it is through, maybe some school in the MAC or whatever it might be. So that's impressive. And I understand now, too, they've certainly spilled well beyond the bounds. Nobody's just recruiting in-state. I understand that. But, the mantra in Montana is you win your state. You got to get your state first, and then you fill it in, with kids from wherever you can get them after that. That's not true at North Dakota State now. North Dakota State just goes, we're going to go get all the guys that we think we want and need to be a dominant program like we've been year in and year out. But when Craig Bull first started to get that thing rolling, it wasn't that way. They have the reputation with the number 2 overall pick in the draft and then, now a $100 million contract or whatever. That now you have all and all the championships, you have that reputation. You didn't, though, at one point, and how that separation came to pass is a very interesting question. And I mean, this is what separates, good coaches from great coaches.
Well, there's multiple different factors. First of all, North Dakota State currently has 17 North Dakota natives on their roster. Yeah. That's a third of what the Montana schools carry. I mean, Bob Stitt, during his lowest number of Montana guys, still had 36 or 38 guys on the roster. Montana State has had upward of 50 for the whole decade. And, back in the old Bobby Houck days, it was 50-plus on those teams as well. Usually 50% or more of your roster is going to be Montana guys. A couple different reasons. First of all, I think that the difference between in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition at the Montana schools is more varied than in a lot of other schools too. You can still go to school for pretty darn cheap in Montana if you're an in-state kid, and that out-of-state tuition is significantly more, but probably about 3 times as much or out-of-state guys. So you can fortify your roster a lot easier with preferred walk-ons at Montana because of the state institution tuition. Secondly, you look at those 17 guys from North Dakota on North Dakota State's roster, 5 of them are from Fargo. Fargo is a metropolitan area. I mean, Fargo is twice the size of Billings. It would be far and away the biggest city in Montana. And I think that has a factor in that, you have a population epicenter that's going to give you a couple kids every single year. Mm-hmm. That makes a difference. So I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't necessarily – I mean, Fargo's in North Dakota, so those kids count as North Dakota natives, but they're a lot different than the rest of the North Dakota natives that you're recruiting.
Right.
Third, North Dakota State North Dakota State has had great tradition for ever and ever since winning the Division II national championship way back in the early 1960s. I mean, they have dozens of conference championships, an array of Division II national championships, and then now a whole trophy case full of FCS national championships. But I would say that the biggest factor that contributed to North Dakota State's rapid rise was the fact that Minnesota was simultaneously horrible. Mm. And so now you can, I mean, when you're saying, hey, look at all our tradition, even before they even won the national championship in 2011, their first one, you could still bring kids on recruiting visits and say, look at all these trophies, look at all these banners, look at the momentum that we have. If you're recruiting Twin City area kids or anybody in Minnesota for that matter, I mean, the straight answer here is that North Dakota State has straight dominated Minnesota. They have dominated Minnesota. They're getting the best guys out of Minnesota. Then you go play Minnesota and you whip them. That helps. Then you go play Iowa and Kansas State and Kansas. They beat all those schools. Mm-hmm. So now you can straight up go in and you can say, hey, 3-star recruit that's from a small town in Iowa, you got an offer from us, you got an offer from Iowa. We beat Iowa 34-17 at Kinnick Stadium last year. Who do you want to play for?
Yep.
And the other factor here is that what you said is exactly right on. They have a national recruiting map now. North Dakota State has almost as many guys from Florida as they do from North Dakota on their team. How does that happen?
You play in a dome.
The tradition helps so much, but that is so underrated. That's why Jeff Choate and Bobby Hauck are always sitting at the microphone screaming, facilities, 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 facilities. Because you can get a kid to come, not only come, but stay.
Yeah.
When they're from Florida, if they're like, okay, we get to go to our indoor practice facility in our indoor dome, and we have to play outside when we go to Macomb, Illinois, and that's it. Whereas, not that big of a surprise that 2 out of the 3 Florida kids left Montana State's program this year after they practiced at 6 o'clock in the morning during spring ball when it's negative 150.
But now, let's be clear. Nobody's talking about doming Bobcat Stadium.
No.
Stadium,
but the practice facility.
Having the practice areas in order to do that, to be inside and to, be sheltered a little bit, even if it is 6 a.m. and 0 degrees outside. So, yeah, I'm with you on all that. All right.
Well, it's also just what do you have, what do you not have? And that's something that Montana State are both going to have to address because straight up right now, Weber State has an indoor practice facility. North Dakota State have indoor everything. They're going to be recruiting a lot in the same, even if North Dakota State are no longer, North Dakota's not in the Big Sky anymore. North Dakota State's in a different league. You're still going to be able to recruiting from a lot of the similar territories. And what you have and what you don't have, it's a huge recruiting pitch. It's used prevalently in the recruiting game.
It's Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. This has been Prep Extra segment brought to us by the Farmers State Bank. Check it out. If you are in a bind, you got a challenging real estate market, you can go in and get pre-approval on a loan. Put yourself in a better position to make an offer when you have your financing in place first. Local loan approvals for personal mortgage or commercial needs. Experienced lenders help you through the process. Faster turnaround times as well. Check it out. Farmers State Bank, farmersebank.com. Quick break on the other side. OJ, 25 years later.
We ate a lot of steaks before we came up with the Montana Club's Private Reserve Cut Angus. It's as good a steak as you're going to get. Our Private Reserve Cut Angus is specially cut for us. And with our custom seasoning, it has a flavor that's absolutely incomparable. We're confident that it will satisfy the most discriminating steak customer for an unrivaled steak experience. Real Montana, real food. The Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce two of our best tires ever just in time for summer. There's our exclusive open range AT that we believe is our quietest, smoothest, and best all-season traction tire ever, or the Reputation, our exclusive high-mileage premium passenger tire. Get $50 off alignment when you purchase a set of 4 open range AT or Reputation tires. Book an appointment today at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time only. See details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, but we also know that you're going to pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it. Well, not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with a staff of specialists that can answer any question. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and, are you ready, lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Everybody knows that high school sports generate suspense, excitement, and drama.
They also generate higher grade point averages, stronger work habits, and greater self-esteem.
Everybody knows that high school sports give us more value for our entertainment dollar.
They also give us leaders committed to strengthening communities right here in Montana. The true value of playing sports in school can't be measured in wins and losses or dollars and cents. Studies show that participation in sports, along with other extracurricular activities, is one of the best ways to teach leadership, cooperation, accountability, and other invaluable life skills. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you'll be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the Montana High School Association and the Montana Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Tootell and Nuanez. Listen to the podcast on the TuneIn Radio app or on iTunes. 1029ESPN.com. Tootell and Nuanez. All guests join the show on the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. Broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studio on ESPN Radio in Western Montana and across the state on SWX television. Here is Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez.
You want to check us out on the podcast? You can do that. TuneIn Radio app, iTunes, Spotify, all of those things. The podcast available on the TuneIn Radio app. Did I say that? Yeah, I did. Losing it, Colter. Been a hard,
lost
long,
it.
Long, hard day for me.
Long. I don't know about hard.
You go check it out, though. Tootell and Nuanez podcast, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. You can get us there. The podcast available next to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Rate it, review it, like it, do all the things. Colter, couple things we wanted to get into. Some Osprey baseball will be on their first second series. That makes sense. They finished their first one. Now they have their first road trip between series to get down to Idaho Falls. So the Osprey, after taking 2 of 3 from Great Falls in the first series, go play the Chuckers there in the second series before returning to Missoula for their home opener on Friday. But we did not get into the 25-year anniversary of O.J. Simpson's famed slow car chase. That was last week, I think, was the 25th anniversary of that, and how much the world has changed. And truly, I mean, people I think are increasingly aware, and especially the documentary that was done, O.J. Made in America, of the true influence and impact that series of events had. But it is worth reflecting on once again, which we didn't do last week, about some of that stuff. And I know this intrigues you to just no end.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I would say that the world we live in today, from a pop culture and media and exposure standpoint, was created on June 12th and June 13th of 1994, 25 years ago last week, when O.J. Simpson captivated the world in a completely different way than he had been captivating the world for decades. That high speed, low speed, whatever you want to call it, chase through L.A. in the white Bronco. OJ's got the gun. Is he gun to his head? Is his gun out the window? What's OJ doing with the gun? What's OJ doing? Why is OJ running from the cops? That created this sort of insatiable desire for voyeurism. And it's accelerated now to the point where reality TV shows, whether it's American Idol or The Voice or America's Got Talent or some of like the, more palatable and wholesome reality shows, or whether it's Keeping Up with the Kardashians and what's Carolyn Wash? Housewives of Sunset Boulevard.
Nighttime real estate in Los Angeles or whatever.
I mean, gosh, it's just, it makes my head hurt just thinking about it. But I really think that was the launching point. I think that we have always been intrigued, like we talked about, just the titans of sports before picture television was a real thing, and just how famous those guys were and how revered and almost godlike they seemed. But I think that this hyper voyeurism, this obsession with celebrity for celebrity's sake. I mean, think about how many people that were involved in the O.J. Simpson case that went on to become epically famous for no other reason than being involved in this case. I mean, like the guy who lived in the guest house, and I don't even remember their names, but everybody knows these people's names. They've had reality shows of their own, and they've been on Big Brother and game shows and all this stuff. But the concept of being famous for being famous. Mm-hmm. You are famous because you're famous. I mean, the Kardashian family was just a rich, wealthy Brentwood, California family who would have been probably largely anonymous on the world scale, with the exception of Robert Kardashian representing O.J. Simpson, and then all the dominoes that fell down after that. But I think that for us, I mean, you're 38, I'm 32, so we were both kids. I guess you would have been, about 13?
Yeah. I mean,
you're a teenager,
remember watching the TV and seeing this whole thing unfold.
I remember it vividly, even though I was only 7 years old. And I still think that for guys that are a generation removed, it's impossible to explain the singular place that O.J. Simpson held in American society. O.J. Simpson basically created the idea of a athlete spokesperson endorsement. I mean, Joe Namath had his silk leggings ads and stuff, right. But nowhere near on the front of the Wheaties box, selling the rental car, selling the tires, selling whatever it is you ever wanted. He was the ultimate pitchman. And then you factor in that he was an unbelievable player, perhaps one of the greatest running backs that's ever played the game. He's got the USC ties. He's an African-American who transcends race at a very volatile time in race relations in America. I mean, he came of age and was his most famous right at the peak of the civil rights movement, then into the 70s, and he sort of helped not only blaze the trail, but ease a lot of the volatility in race relations in America. And I think that he was one of the first probably African-American celebrities that, by and large, white America accepted and embraced. And, then he goes on to be in movies, and he's this crossover star. And I think you cannot underestimate just how truly not only famous, but beloved this person was, and how absolutely shocking it was to the world that this was happening. And then you factor in that this was in L.A., less than 18 months after the L.A. riots, less than 3 years after the Rodney King verdict. And now you bring all the racial tensions that exist in Los Angeles, that exist between impoverished and disenfranchised people and the Los Angeles Police Department. You throw all this into the mix, and then now you have basically a reignition of the race war that had just played out in L.A. with perhaps the most central and also polarizing figure that could be involved in such a heated time. It's unbelievable to really think about that was an occurrence. I mean, we were talking about this. Like, who do you compare this to? What athlete right now, this day and age, could allegedly or certainly murder his wife and her friend and have, I mean, the amount that this would resonate now is just, it's beyond comprehension.
Right. I mean, this happened if you take somebody like Aaron Hernandez, and that was
but Aaron Hernandez
cover story for 6 months plus.
Totally. And Aaron Hernandez was a third-round pick who caught like 6 touchdowns in his NFL career. He was not somebody that was world famous like O.J. Simpson.
Nothing compared to what that was and what that, has continued to transpire, and it's still a point of great intrigue, consternation, maybe anger, but invariably interest from basically everyone.
Is there a more captivating's the wrong word, but is there a more compelling and widely followed true crime story in America?
I mean, it's bigger than Watergate.
For sure.
Right? I mean, I know it's later, so maybe it's different, but I mean,
but there's so many layers to it.
Yeah.
You have the racial elements, you have the sports elements, you have the pop culture elements, you have the consumerism elements, you have the climate at the time, you have the vicious nature in which these murders took place. You have the way that O.J. acted before, during, and after.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think that O.J. Simpson is... I would encourage any person in the world to watch O.J. Simpson Made in America. I truly think it's the greatest documentary ever made. I really think that. I think that it is so telling, not only about the specifics of this murder, this trial, and everything that's played out afterwards, but just the way that it paints the picture of America at the time and the way that this changed the world as we know it. It's just so unbelievably compelling and interesting. And this story will never die, even when the characters in it do. And I think that is, I think it says so much about America in so many different ways.
Yeah. It's certainly uniquely American in the way and the what of all aspects of it.
I mean, has there been a trial in modern history where the world sat on? I mean, I shouldn't say the world because I have no idea if people in Malaysia were watching this verdict. But in America, this was like, what's your job? Okay, it doesn't matter unless you're like an emergency room surgeon. You're watching the O.J. Simpson verdict.
Well, it's totally true. I mean, it shifted television.
It did. That's the biggest part about it.
Network, the news on TV up until the O.J. trial was, guess what? The news. And then the coverage was so insatiable in terms of just the time.
And it was so salacious, but because it wasn't even salacious like we get salacious news now, it was so salacious because that was what was happening.
Well, right, but also when you have 24-hour round-the-clock coverage of this thing, no matter how crazy and incredible, you run out of things to say. You certainly run out of news things to say about it, but they're required to keep up on this. This is the advent of opinion-based
cable news commentary.
Quote news. And now there's multiple networks that have the word news in their name and are merely opinions being spouted by people.
They're shows like this.
That's it. Yep. That's all it is. It's an entertainment industry that was birthed at this moment.
So crazy.
The
reason that made me think of this is O.J. Simpson, a day after the anniversary, like no one but O.J. can, posted like a 20-second video on Twitter, on his newly created Twitter account, and said, I have some truths to tell. Stay tuned.
I mean, it's just, it's bizarre at its height. Is maybe that's what makes it American at its height. Coulter, before we wrap this thing up, can we dip back into sports for a moment? Can
Sure.
we do that?
Yes, certainly can.
The Pioneer League season is off and running. the Missoula Osprey were up in Great Falls and split the series 2 out of 3 with Great Falls. Missoula won the first and third games, including 9-0 last night. Great Falls getting game 2. Tonight, the Osprey go on the road to Idaho Falls to play the Chuckers. I believe that Great Falls and Billings are getting together for that series, for the second series. Now Idaho Falls in the Pioneer League North Division, because of the absence, the moving of Helena, the Helena Brewers, to Colorado Springs. So significant in both the travel and this being the first ever in North Division game against Idaho Falls for the Missoula Osprey. We'll have all the Osprey games for you, but exciting games. I'll tell you what, it scored 6. It was 6-5, I think, on opening night. 9-0 last night. A lot of offense going on.
Spencer Brickhouse, who was a 7th-round pick out of East Carolina. He's a 2-time first-team All-American.
Say his name again, please.
Spencer Brickhouse.
Thank you.
Great name. Great baseball name.
Are you kidding?
But he was the most outstanding player of the American Athletic Conference for East Carolina. Multiple-time first-team All-American. One of the best college players in the country. Drafted in the 7th round by the O's, he was just assigned to Missoula. So he made his debut last night in Great Falls. He'll play again tonight against Idaho Falls, and a guy that should create some excitement because he's a guy that can really play.
Here's the thing that I don't know if you love if you are any of the teams, but you're up there in Great Falls, and the drive to get to Helena is 90 miles, an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
The drive to go to Idaho Falls, 360 miles, and 5.5 hours, probably more in a bus.
Oh, yeah.
Tell you what, in an already large footprint, which the Pioneer League certainly is at the Class A level, single A level that it is, the additional miles are probably not welcome for a baseball team that just does nothing but travel. I mean, is there anything other than play baseball, ride the bus, try and knock some food down, get some sleep, repeat, right? I mean, that's what you're up to, and now especially here. And it's one thing if you're playing in East Coast leagues, 4 states, 60 miles, whatever. My goodness gracious. From Billings to Idaho Falls.
It's a long ways.
That's a division of the Pioneer League.
Absolutely.
Yes. Quite a bit. Anyway, game 4 of the season coming up for you here in about 45 minutes from now. Tom Wilms on the call as he will be all season long. So enjoy that here. And then we will also have all of the Missoula Osprey home games on SWX Montana television as well. So 2 for 1. Boys and girls, have a wonderful evening. Good to be with you. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Tootell, Nuanez, ESPN Radio, SWX Montana television. For 20 years, the Missoula Osprey have brought Missoula a fan-friendly experience in one of the most beautiful summer settings in America, and the baseball has been top-notch as well. ESPN Missoula is happy to be the exclusive radio carrier of the Missoula Osprey once again this summer. Tune in to 102.9 FM to hear every single Osprey game as the Birds chase another Pioneer League title. The Missoula Osprey broadcasts are brought to you in part by Widmer Brothers Brewing, Diversified Construction and Materials, Mission Paint, and Selway Armory.
Right now at Carl Tyler Chevrolet, take advantage of employee pricing and up to $7,500 in rebates on all 2018 Silverados. Get the most out of your summer with a reliable truck that'll take you anywhere during Carl Tyler Chevrolet's June Silverado sell down. Save $11,719 on select 2018 Silverado 1500s. View our full inventory at gmofmontana.com or 3663 North Reserve Street. Carl Tyler Chevrolet. Find new roads.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
When you need a bank to help ramp up your savings strategy, look to your local bank, Opportunity Bank of Montana. Build confidence in your financial future when you create a rainy day cushion or take care of the nest egg you already have. Opportunity Bank offers options from basic savings to money market accounts and certificates with competitive rates. There's nothing like the feeling of progress. So let's get started today. Come see us at Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com. Member FDIC.
Hey folks, Ryan Tootell here, and I'm with Josh of the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, what are people left dealing with after an accident?
Well, quite a few things, actually. We see people that are in pain, they still need to get to work, they need to raise their kids, and now they have to take time to go see doctors and other healthcare providers. They're frustrated with working with the insurance companies and getting the runaround. We'll take on the burden of dealing with the insurance companies so you can get the best settlement possible and get back to your life.
Find your advocate online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana. KKVU HD3 Stevensville and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula.